That record sat on my hard drive for almost 18 months. I went through 12 months of people saying they didn't like it or they didn't think it was a strong enough record. And then one guy discovered it in a pack of songs that I sent him. He played it. And then my whole life changed.
Wow.
Cinema 4D, Unreal Engine, Blender, and Embergen. What is an incredible musician, producer like yourself doing in these softwares?
I decided to get a brief understanding of how the software works, just so that next time I work with an animator, I can speak in his language a bit more. But then I kind of just got a bit carried away, to be honest.
Is there a lot of opportunities for 3D artists to work with music producers like yourself?
The things that we can do in Unreal Engine now compared to 10 years ago is just mind-blowing. There's going to be so many more opportunities for 3D artists, even with the whole AI thing that's happening. Essentially working on a project where the screens can go from like this to this in the space of 50 seconds.
I wouldn't believe we would have this conversation with a music producer.
Here you are, someone who's already incredibly successful in their own field, and now you're exploring this whole other field, which is insane. It's so giant. How do you see the difference when it comes to creating visuals versus creating music? Ruben, welcome to the Bad Decisions podcast.
Hi guys, how you doing?
We're doing fucking great. How about yourself?
Good, man. Glad to be here. It's I've been a long time viewer of the podcast and I love everything you do. So it's good to finally be here and have a chat with you guys.
Well, we are a long time listener to your music, and it's also great to have this conversation. There's so much to talk about, and I know everyone listening and watching is going to be in for a treat. But Ruben, I think I want to start with something interesting. Maybe you don't expect it, maybe you do, but let's give it a try. Me and Farhad, when we were watching one of your shows, the AV, the audiovisual debut live from London, in the description, you mentioned, quote, all visual content created by myself, and you noted some other 3D artists, using Cinema 4D, Unreal Engine, Blender, and Embergen.
Yeah.
What the hell? What is an incredible musician, producer like yourself doing in these softwares? What are you doing? You got to tell us about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole reason I got into, to start from the start, I always felt like music and video or visual, they just complement each other so much, and I can play a song on my car or whatever, but if you actually listen to the music while you've got some emotional piece you're looking at, it's like another sensory thing, I guess, and it just elevates the song and the video piece to another level, and I always felt like they always complemented each other really well. So in around maybe like end of 21, start of 22, I started really getting interested in, what would look good for my music, because up until that I was just bringing out bangers and making club records that DJs were playing, and like the most visual content we would have is like me playing it at a festival or something, and so anyway, I obviously didn't know what I was doing back then. I had no clue, and I did what most people in my world does, is we hire an animator, which is what I probably should have stopped at as well. but so I worked with an animator, and if I'm being honest, I just didn't have a great time with him. And it wasn't that he was bad or that that he wasn't good at what he did, but it was just sort of, I felt super frustrated that I couldn't get my ideas across, and I couldn't tell him what I wanted, and he got frustrated with me, and I got frustrated with him. And the age-old story of a client not knowing what to say to the to the animator, and then me trying to get him to do things that now I know was like not a one-day thing. This is going to take why did you just try this? Like, yeah, that's going to take a week to do. And I was like, how is that going to take a week to do? And now that now I know it would take a week to do, but back then I had no clue. So, it's, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to that one, especially if they're coming across with clients and stuff, but, anyway, so I decided to I says, all right, let me get a brief understanding of how the software works. So I downloaded Cinema 4D. I was like, all right, let me just figure out how this works, just so that next time I work with an animator, I can speak in his language a bit more. And I know this is how long it will take to do this. And, just to get a general understanding of, how does Octane render work? How does, the vectors work? All this sort of, very basic level stuff. But then I kind of just got a bit carried away, to be honest.
Luckily, he didn't quit his DJing job to becoming an animator.
Well, I feel these days I'm almost more a visual artist than I am a DJ now. But
so interesting.
Yeah, but that's I started to kind of I felt a lot of satisfaction of being able to make my own little loop that I can then put on a wall and like watch it and be like, this is something I did. And, it's just, I guess it comes from, I've always been interested in technology and I've always been a nerd, and, it was something that I never thought I would end up doing, but, it's just led me down this path. And, I get as much satisfaction now out of making a really cool visual piece as I do making a song, so that's sort of where I've been at and where I'm headed. But yeah, so I dip my toes in lots of different softwares. I started with Cinema 4D, and then in the recent times I've been moving things to Unreal Engine because I want to start working on some real-time stuff for the show. And but then even like some offset stuff like Embergen and stuff I started to use for some visuals, and I'm just really curious about how it all works, and I don't claim to be the best visual artist in the world. I'm probably one of the worst, but I know just to get around, and I can make something that I like for myself for a screen. But if somebody came to tell me, well, can you do this as a client sort of thing, I'd be like, I don't have no idea what I'm doing. But that's how I always learned. I always felt like when I learned the best was when I just get thrown into doing something and be like, hey, go try do this, and then figure out how to make it work, rather than sitting, I've always been really bad at school and stuff. I was never a great, listener. So it was just the way I learned best is by getting stuck in, and that's what I did with this, and this is where it led me to,
Wow. So let's get it straight. You started with zero experience in the visual art and 3D. So when you opened Cinema 4D, that was your first time doing anything with 3D.
Yeah, I had no idea, man. I was like, what is this sorcery? And then it just sort of went from there, and I just learned the basics and I think, and I remember it being like January 22, I think it was. I just spent like 2 weeks. I just didn't sleep very much and just, every day cranking out. How does this work? How does that work? And even back then, like the idea then wasn't to like become a 3D artist myself by no means. It was literally just so that I can, figure out a little bit of how this works, so that whenever I go to speak to the 3D artists, I can like speak in their language, and that's still kind of mainly what I do. But, then I just really fell in love with the software and the process and started to do some of it myself. And, I still collaborate a lot. It's very different to my music career, where when it comes to the music, I start and finish. There's nobody in between, from the mastering to the mixing to the ideas process. It starts here and it ends here, But with the 3D world, I'm way more open to collaboration, and there's people that's way better than me at it, So that's sort of the history of it and where I started and where it's led me to,
First of all, I'd like to mention how admirable it is what you've done, because so many people, we realized, are complaining about not being able to find their path and, waiting for the right time to start in the world of 3D arts, whatever it is. And yet here you are, someone who's already incredibly successful in their own field, which is the audio field. Let's call it the audio field for people to understand, very simply put. And now you're exploring this whole other field, which is insane. It's so giant in its own way. And you've got both of them, balancing both of them on your hands. It's unbelievable to me. So I want to say how admirable that is, first of all. And my question to you is, how do you see the difference between the creative sense of Ruben when it comes to creating visuals versus creating music? How are they alike or not alike?
I mean, honestly, they're very, very similar. I think probably because most of the times that I'm creating a visual, it's for an audio track that I've already written. They are very similar. And for the last couple of visuals, it would be sort of, I would create the visuals based on the storyline of the track, or how the track was feeling, or the intensity of it, or the lyrics and the story behind it. And I would often speak to the writers of the song, the vocalist or whatever, and be like, what were you feeling whenever you did the record, when you wrote your words and stuff? And then I would take that into account, and then I would kind of start storyboarding ideas and things I think might look cool. But then also the added thing is that, well, it has to also look primarily good on screen, because that's where it ends up, and it's just, I learned that also the hard way about, saturation and not using too much smoke, because it doesn't look good on LED walls, and it's all itself, and it was like the first time I ran a visual, it was like covered in like octane smoke, and it looked so pretty on my phone, and then I was like, why does this look so shit? And my VJ was like, yeah, it looks like a halo around the whole thing, and it was just because I was using too much bloom, and I was using all that kind of thing, and I had to learn that the hard way. But to weave back in again, I guess, to your question, it's for me, it's like they all work so hand in hand because I just work for my own projects. So, the process is very similar. The music, obviously, because I've been doing it for so long, comes a lot easier in the sense where I just head back there and just work away for a couple of hours and come across something I like. But it's also quite similar in the 3D world where, in the starting times, when I started learning it, it was more, I would go off to try to do something, but the final product would be completely different, And now it's still a little bit like that, but I kind of, even just for time's sake, I storyboard it a little bit more, and I kind of try and stick to like an idea rather than just going off into the wild, because it just it turns into like a never-ending story then, But yeah, that's sort of the way I kind of look at it whenever I go into a visual, and it's always focused around the music first because I'm a producer first, and then I try and find a visual element that will like elevate it,
It must be incredibly interesting to have the audio first and then the video, because as you mentioned, you have the emotions already in you. You had the vision. Yeah. Even when you're coming up with the music, I'm sure you're visualizing already what it might look like. Yeah. And so for you, that part is now even easier and more enjoyable as a consequence. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier which I found quite, I would say, incredible. We read Elon Musk's book, and one of the things he's really good at, and everybody around him talks about, is that he always tries to learn the fundamentals of whatever his company is working on so that he can speak the same language as his engineers. He's not just trying to manage a company and oversee things. He wants to understand everything to the fundamentals, and it has made him become so successful in life. I can see the very same thing with you. Not many producers would go through what you're going through just because they want to make sure the visuals are done the right way, just so they can understand the language. Why do you think you had that in you and so many other people can't even start?
I mean, it could be many things. Is it maybe I'm a control freak? Is it maybe I didn't want to pay a fortune on it? Being honest about it. But, no, mainly it was just, probably, it goes back to how much I love technology, and I don't find this a chore. It's like other parts of my career I just don't want to do, but stuff like this I just love it. And I love getting bogged into a Cinema 4D project, or these days more Unreal Engine, and just sort of lose myself for a while and coming up with really cool content, and then just showing my friends the next day saying, look what I did, and they're like, oh, that looks really cool, and that's the main reasons. But as you said, yeah, like I guess Elon, he takes an understanding of something just so that he can communicate, and that's again why I started it, but it's just got a bit over the top then, and I figured it out more. But I'm like that with most things, and I try to get an understanding of stuff so that I can speak in their language, be it social media or visuals or music or just everything. I kind of try, and I just take an interest. I'm always interested to learn, and that's, I suppose, stands for this,
I want to talk about the impact of visual experiences. As people who attend the parties, the festival, the events, we always can see clearly the difference between having a visual experience with the music, which is synced, which is relatable, or sometimes that we can see that, the audio and visual are not in sync, they are not matching. As someone who's a producer or someone who's a DJ and do his own visual, how do you see the impact of visual has changed over the past few years?
I mean, it's changed so much because I think, whenever I started, like I've been making music for, 12, 13 years and touring professionally maybe for 6. But even whenever I started to tour myself, it was very club driven. And the production, you would get production now and again if you went to a big festival like Tomorrowland or something like that. But, now it's like every show that the kids go to, they want big production, and they want the big moments, and they want the fireworks and the screens and the displays, and that's the stuff that's working, and I think because the scene that I'm in is growing so fast and it's getting so big, it's at this stage, the festivals and the shows we play are like very similar in the same level as like pop star level, Yes. But whenever you go to see a pop star perform, they've got such production going on that it's just mesmerizing, and we have to kind of, not saying we have to get to that standard, but we have to be in that ballpark, because if if a kid's paying $300 for a ticket and there's 20,000 people there, you can't just rock up with a USB stick and then just a couple of lasers and call it a day. Unfortunately, we'd be a lot more rich if I did. But
Yes.
we have to now provide more, and I think fans expect more, and they see what's going on around them, and they want to have a full experience, which I'm all for because I think it's such a cool way to work. So that's where I think it's at.
I agree with you. I think the visual experience definitely has had an impact, and it's been evolving rapidly over the years. We were talking about this with Farhad. Our parents are now seeing these EDM festivals pop up on their feed on Instagram because of the visuals, because they're not interested in the music. Their genres are completely different, but they're now being introduced to the genres of music that we like because of the visuals. It's translating the music in a sense to a whole new audience, which in turn allows for producers and DJs to have a new opportunity to be able to introduce their music to an audience.
Yeah, like whenever we did I played as a guest for Anyma's Sphere show in December, and I just remember looking around at the crowd, and it was such a mixed crowd. I mean, you had obviously a lot of young people there, but also like I was seeing guys in their 60s, 70s.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. And
Wow.
couples, and then on the flight back, they were wearing the Sphere T-shirts, and they were such a mixed age, and I think a lot of those people went to the show not really so much for the music, but more for the experience and they've seen it, as you just said, they've seen it online, they've seen it up on their screens, they thought this is fun. And I think that's super cool. I mean, people are conflicted about it. Some people hate it, some people love it. I think, again, just being a technology freak and just loving the way that technology expands and keeps advancing, I think it's super cool, man, and I think it's great that the scene has now got so big, because we spent so many years being thrown into the back rooms, the big festivals over the past 30, 40 years. Dance music was always like this kind of dirty term where it's like, throw them in a little room in the back, 400 people, no production, and just let them have at it. But now, we're actually becoming the mainstream, whether we like it or not. I guess some people's got conflicted ideas about that, but we are, when stuff like the Anyma show can sell out 12 or 10 spheres in a row, like that's no longer underground. That's becoming mainstream, and I'm all for it, because it means that we can do cooler stuff. And I wouldn't be able to put the visual displays that I make here on big screens if we didn't have budgets to like pay for it, and stuff. So yeah, so I think it's for sure changing, and it's changing very fast, and it's changing a lot. And for me, it's pretty exciting, but also kind of draining, because you just always have to be on the ball all the time, man. It's like you can't miss a beat,
Yes.
But yeah, that's what I think.
How did it feel like playing at the Sphere? Because it's such a huge venue with a huge production.
Yeah, it was great, because I was there a year before just with my girlfriend. I played Vegas at the end of 23, I think it was, and the Sphere had I could have got them dates wrong, but the Sphere just opened up that month, and they were doing U2 concerts, but they're also doing a thing during the day called Postcards from Earth, where it's like a 5-minute show and tell, and we went to see that and just got blown away by how amazing it was, and the sound, and like even the sound for me in the place was just incredible, for the size of the room and the awkward shape of it. I was just blown away by that, and obviously the visual elements and how they can manage to run such great quality visuals and the whole like process behind it. So whenever I got asked to actually do it myself, I was like, shit, this is great, and I was just super happy to be involved, man, and I've been kind of looking more into like the back end stuff, just being a nerd, and the technology behind it and how they run the software they run and how they work it. And it's just, if you appreciate that, then you're like, holy crap, this is so good. But even if you don't care about visuals at all, or if you don't care about how it's done, the art behind it, people still appreciate what they're seeing, because they've never seen something like that before, and to pull something off like that is just such a feat, and I think it was cool, and everybody that was at the show, from the DJs to the fans, they were just all really happy to be there, and I think it was great, man, and I think that's what's so special about the place. Technology, aside from the technology, is just the fact that you're there, and you don't feel out of place, because sometimes whenever we do shows and it's a very young crowd, you see some of the kind of older heads that just love music and they feel a little bit uncomfortable and stuff, and they're not with their crowd, but like the way that they've set it up is perfect. So if you want to go and dance, you've got the main floor, but if you want to sit down with your wife and you want to enjoy the show, there you go. You've got seats, you got a really good room. The audio is amazing no matter where you are. So I think they've just pulled it off so well, man. So I was just happy to be involved with it, and I think I hope that they keep expanding what they're doing. It looks like they are. So I think it's great for the scene. It's great for both visual and audio scene.
We are sold.
We're sold. We're going there.
Okay, we are going for the next show.
I saw this video on Instagram of a guy tripping because of the visuals. The visuals were so heavy and so realistic. He was tripping on the chairs. I was like, wow, must be really good.
Yeah, definitely a few of that happened, or some of that happened whenever I was there as well.
No, but I saw that Tomorrowland is announcing shows in summer for Sphere. I think that would be a banger.
Yeah.
We should definitely go.
100%.
Now that Ruben says it's good, we definitely go to Sphere.
Yeah, you should do it.
I'm curious now that you have, dipped your toe in the world of visual arts and your experience, and now you're also passionate about this. You said you learned a lot more about the communication you can have with visual artists and how you can deal with timelines and, the future projection of where this world is going. I want to ask you is because so many artists actually listen to this podcast. Where do you see this world of visual and audio going forward? Is there a lot of opportunities for 3D artists to work with music producers like yourself in the future now that the impact of visuals is so heavy in this scene?
I would say so. I mean, and there's for sure, just even in my genre or subgenre, I see so many of my fellow artists coming up with visuals that 5 years ago would have just been a cover image and they would have thrown up on Beatport, and that would be it. Now they're actually developing proper scenes, and yes, some better than others, but it's just I suppose since I'm so involved, I kind of look at it not from a fan anymore. I just look at it from that leg doesn't look right, that looks janky. It's like a curse, but it's to answer the question, I think it's great, and I think there's going to be so many more opportunities for 3D artists, and even with the whole AI thing that's happening, I don't think it's going to, because I do speak to some artists about it, and they're worried about their job and stuff, which is totally, I can see where that is, but I don't feel like for every opportunity that's closed through AI or whatever, there'll be another door opening, just because it's getting so big now and there's so much happening, and I think also it's getting cheaper to do, so I think 10 years ago was Unreal Engine, what the things that we can do on Unreal Engine now compared to 10 years ago was just mind blowing, and that will continue to happen, and it'll also create a cheaper entry point for artists that maybe don't have the kind of money that the big guys have to spend $100,000 on a visual, but maybe they've got £1,000, but in a couple of years time maybe that will be worth it because things will get quicker and it won't take 3 weeks to do a visual versus now the way it is. So I think it will just keep on, it will change, but it will just keep on expanding in different ways, and it's just as long as you're kind of fluid enough to kind of keep working with it. Same as music, we have to just keep adapting to what changes in the scene, and we can't stay and say, well, I'm going to do this for the next 20 years, and if you don't like it, that's just not how it works. We got to adapt, and that's the same in the 3D world, and so I think that's where my head's at with it,
I think what you mentioned here is super important. Adapting and looking at technology trends. I'm not even talking about social media trends or anything. If you don't adapt, you will be irrelevant in a few years because the technology is changing so fast. We have AI changes and we have changes in the 3D world, in the music world, and in the culture. If you don't adapt, you would be irrelevant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, both of you guys. And what we usually talk about when it comes to AI is very simple. If you are an individual or a small group of people, and this happens to be the group that is most worried about the changes, I actually think you shouldn't be. As long as you're learning, you have the most amount of advantage. Because as you mentioned yourself, these tools that are now popping up day by day, let's say ChatGPT, for instance, can help increase your efficiency by such levels, orders of magnitude, unlike ever before. And so if you really have good ideas, if you know what you're doing and you are learning day by day, just like you are in the world of 3D, in the world of music, and you keep testing and experimenting with these new tools, there's so much more opportunity for you out there. And I think worrying about it is not going to help. No. That's how we look at it.
Yeah, me too. And I think, you got to embrace it, and I think, I again, because I come from a different perspective, I look at it from a music terms. If an AI tool came out tomorrow that could make a song sound like Rebūke in 5 seconds, I'd be probably pretty salty about it as well, because I'd be like, well, I spent 14 years developing this shit and now somebody can rip it off in 5 minutes. And so I totally get it. I get the arguments for sure, but the thing is, it's here and it's not going away. We can see it's not going away. And also I think, the real smart guys and the guys that will last are the guys that will be like, all right, well, this is here. Let's figure out how to use it to our advantage and then go from there. Like for instance, we had my latest visual for teardrops. I'm not sure you've seen it, but it was a close up of a girl, and we developed her in Character Creator. But then for me, because it was such an emotional piece, I wanted it to be very much so where it's focused completely on her face and the structure and her emotion towards the lyrics, and expand further into the visual. She gets more and more emotional, and then she cries, and all that. And at the time, we were gonna basically pay a studio in LA to hire an actress, go into the studio in LA and use the motion sensors to record her face and everything, and send us back the data, and we would do it. And I think we got quoted like $20K to do that, for a day. And I was like, holy shit, So then we had, just out of a whim, I was playing with Kling at the time, and I was like, what would happen if we tried to do this in Kling? And I was like, there's no way we can probably hold the image, and there's no way we can probably get the expressions the way we want it. And at the start, it wasn't working at all. Like, it was just making some weird images and weird faces and stuff. But in the end, what we did was we took like a bunch of snapshots and we used the start and end frame. So we would make the expressions, and we would start with her eyes closed, and then her eyes open, and then she's crying or she's sad, and then we would get Kling to sort of like fill in the gaps, and like this, the detail and the micro expressions and what it could do. I don't even think we would have got it as good as if we had somebody go into a studio and do it. Just how good it was, and also the fact that it threw up some unexpected surprises where we were like, we didn't want to do that, but actually that looks sick, so let's try it.
Yes.
Actually, some bits made the cut that we didn't even plan to do. So it's like, so that was our. I mean, it also it created. On hindsight, it probably would have taken the same amount of time either way. It definitely wasn't quicker. But I feel like the end product to me was very close to where we wanted it, and for a quarter of the price as well. But again, that wasn't the case where we just said, oh, we're going to be lazy and get AI to do everything. We still developed the character. We developed the different scenes that works in between it, and the different emotions, and then we use that as a tool. So I feel like that's stuff like that. I think is really important, and it's just to make your life quicker and to even get ideas across quicker. And I think that's the power of AI in my eyes. It's not to like, type in a prompt saying, I want to look like this, and just like, oh, there you go, we're going to throw it up on Instagram. It's like, it's to use it as a tool and as a means to try and get something done quicker, but also, more efficiently as well. And even if it's purely for like mood board stuff and all that as well. So that's kind of the way I deal with it,
I think that is the exact way that we advocate our audience to use AI. Yeah. Because what we explain is you can use it as a tool, as a layer that can come in and fill the missing pieces in between.
Yep.
For example, you spend so much time even prompting Kling to get the perfect look. Everybody thinks that, you go in, you will put in a prompt and you'll get what you want. But the amount of time that you have to experiment, the amount of time that you have to try to get the desired outcome is probably taking, if you do it on the other side, and if you do it with the studio. What would be really, really also important for people to understand is you can use this tool at different part of the workflow. Yeah. If you enjoy some part, you can do it yourself. But if you have one part that is expensive, or you need other people's help, or you cannot do it at this point, you can use AI to help you in this realm.
Yep, absolutely. And that's we also did that with the music video for my collaboration with Deadmau5, where 3/4 of the video was done in Unreal Engine, and then just the very end scene, the dance scene, it just kept looking very janky. And we tried it in Cinema 4D, we tried it in Unreal. It just, no matter what we did, it just looked janky, and we didn't want to start going through like stock images or stock animation loops just for the sake of it. So we thought, well, why don't we try through this into Kling, and then we uploaded the character, we give it really specific direction, and we just cut it, and it's a part of the scene where it's quite sort of subtle anyway, and it's quite dark, so it wasn't, you wouldn't really notice it anyway. But like that saved us so much time, and it saved our bacon a bit as well, because we were kind of struggling, and we're like, the track was coming out on Friday, and we were still on Monday trying to get the music video right. oh, this is not going to go well. And then even for like practical stuff like rendering, I mean, like if we were to render that whole sequence, that would have probably taken half a day, even on the render farm, So, and it's, I think as well, even if you hate AI for creative stuff, even if you use it for upskilling like topaz and stuff like that, and enhancing it, it means now that a guy with a 3090 desktop can shoot out 4K content fairly quickly. He can render it in a HD format and then upscale it, and it still looks very crisp, and it fits. But even whenever I started a couple of years ago, that didn't really exist. And I'm kind of half thinking now, did I waste my money on this thing?
What's the current setup that you have now for all of these renderings?
At the minute, we use a Threadripper CPU that's the processing power, and then we've got four 4090s. The company we use, it's just escaped me. They're a UK company, but they build the chassis and they build the whole thing, and it comes in it's liquid cooled, and it's very, very efficient, very, very quiet as well. And I just can't remember the name. I wish I could give them a shout out because they're really, really good. I just can't remember. But we ordered it from them, and it came, and it just runs like Windows basically. We can, so whatever if I'm on the road, I can log into it through Parsec or whatever, and just set a render. So if I'm working on a scene away from home, I can just throw it onto there and render it. I wake up the next day and it's done. So it's great. It's very mobile friendly, and we've it hooked into the network here. So if I'm using this machine, I can just send it to the other machine as well, and so it's very good. But again, it's like technology advances so quickly. I mean, like how long will it be before the 4090 is out of date? And we put in those, and it's just
yes.
So it's sort of it's already moved on to the 5090s, So, but I think it's already made its money back, versus what we were spending on render farms, and we were just calculating. And we're like, this is going to be cheaper for us, long term, just to buy this and let it do its thing. And we will take it on the road as well, because we're working on a full production for end of the year in US. Which will be more or less all real-time Unreal Engine.
Can you tell us more?
Yeah, I mean it's still, we haven't announced it officially yet, but I think I can do it for the nerds. But
yes.
But we're essentially working on a project where the screens will move on hydraulics, and the content will move in real time with the screens. So to put it kind of easier to explain, one of the issues I was finding last year was that we would be going into a venue one week and it would be a portrait screen, and then the next week would be landscape. So what I was having to do to make it good, you could obviously slice it and stuff, but it always looked crap to me, and so what we were having to do is go back and render it out every time, and then all of a sudden another screen would pop up that's like not really in between either, and it's just like for instance, you mentioned drum sheds. I mean, I can't remember what those dimensions were, but it was like something ridiculous, like 8,000 by 1,000 or something.
Yeah, super wide,
super wide, but not very tall. So at that point, you can't really slice stuff anymore unless you want to like mirror it, which I don't really like that.
No.
So anyway, so that was sort of always a big problem. And then myself and my VJ were like, it'd actually be pretty sick. It'd be sick if we could build something where the screen actually moves.
So it turns into the dimensions of your visuals. Holy shit.
So basically it can go from like this to this in the space of 50 seconds. What we're going to do is we're going to have it all run through End Display, and we're going to run through Unreal Engine, and basically have a guy with an iPad or a phone or whatever, and he's going to be the Unreal Engine guy. So we're going to develop a bunch of little scenes, and we're going to go straight from Unreal onto the screen, and we're going to start making real-time content that we can have stuff move. We can have fluid simulations in real time using Unreal, and even scenes where, like for instance, the girl with the latest character we developed, because we have her built out in Character Creator, we're going to rig her, and we're going to basically have a thing where we can press a button and she looks left, we press another button, she looks right, or she looks into the crowd, and all this kind of thing, and make it really interactive. Because the other flip of it was, I feel like with the 3D space that we're in, you render a visual and it's done, right? You can't really change it. Sure, you can change the color, you can do some little bits and bobs here and there live, but if you go to a Rebūke show in New York and then the night after you go to a Rebūke show in LA, it's going to be essentially the same thing, but just on a different screen, And like, what would it be like if we tried to do this more in real time? And actually, if a fan goes to the New York show and the LA show the night after, and they record both of the clips, it's going to be different. It's like, I really love that whole immersive thing, and almost letting the fan go away saying, how did they do that? And how did that work? So we're playing with all those ideas, and we're kind of playing with ideas about, having important video links into the scene as well, so like the crowd can see themselves within a 3D model or something.
Nice.
The girl's eyes is like reflecting onto the crowd and stuff, but it's actually the real crowd. All this kind of wild stuff. So that's where we're at. I mean, it's still in development stage, and we're working up models and stuff at the minute, and we're going to announce it properly in the next few months. But that's sort of the next sort of level I think the scene's going in, and I don't know a lot of people that's doing it yet. I think some people are doing it, but they're just doing it as tricks. They're like, you see, I don't know if you've seen the one Eric Prydz did where he got the phone out and then
yes, of course,
and like that, but actually real time, because and in the end it was still a 3D render. It was like an illusion sort of thing. So I don't know, man. I mean, sometimes I'm kind of like, will the fans give a shit enough about this?
No, but the most important thing you give a shit.
They might not understand the technicalities of it like we all do right now, but they will feel it. They will feel the emotions that you're trying to evoke. So that's the most important thing. Because for instance, when you go to the Sphere, and I'm sure you've already talked about that, the feeling that you walk away with, you might not know the specific details of how they set up the speakers unless you watch a behind the scenes video. But the guys who were working behind it, I'm sure they had the same question. Will people give a fuck? And well, they were working for years behind the scenes. They will. It's just that they will not understand the technicalities. I love, first of all, it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a DJ and a music producer at all. I feel like I'm just talking to another 3D artist. You know all the fucking terms already. What I love about Unreal Engine is exactly what you just mentioned. And we use a lot of the other softwares. And I think there's never a bias towards a software in the sense that, you should just use this software forever.
Say it again.
No, there's never a bias toward a software where you say you should use this software forever. I don't think that's the case, because softwares change, tools change. But at this moment, 2025, in our opinion, Unreal Engine is the best fucking software out there when it comes to 3D, because of the fact that it also is built on a game engine. So all of the interactivity that you talked about, and the fact that it's real time and photorealistic, and you can import millions of assets, millions of polygons, and it doesn't fucking have a lag. It's real time. All of that for me is insane. Plus, you got all these other tools like MetaHumans now can have lip sync with AI. So you don't actually have to do the motion capture. You are running, let's say, an 11 Labs audio that you just generated.
No, you have the vocals of the music.
Or vocals of your music. And then you can give it to a MetaHuman, and the MetaHuman will now speak it. How fucking nuts is that? And it happens in like 5 minutes.
Mental. Yeah, and that was one of the things I really struggle with the most with 3D, because in the music world, if I create a synth, I can throw a reverb unit on that and just in real time listen to what I'm doing. But one of the things I really, really struggled with Octane and just generally speaking, the traditional Cinema 4Ds or even Blender, was the fact that you did something and then you had to go back, click render, look at it, change it around in, click it, render, change it. And then as the scene got more and more bulky, it was getting longer and longer to do. And at one point probably my terrible optimization as well, but at one point near the end of the project, I'd be working on something, and then I would have to like almost go away for a coffee to come back just to look at what I did. And then I'd be like, well, that light's not bright enough. Oh fuck, here we go again. And then I'd have to add another 10% and then go back. So with Unreal, the fact that we can look at it in real time, it also creates moments where maybe you wouldn't have thought about doing it, but then you're like, oh, this actually looks kind of sick like that, and that's what I love about it, and I think that's why Unreal is winning, and I think Unreal, up until maybe a couple of years ago was a bit more difficult to get like photorealistic looks, and it was, as you said, it was built on a game engine, but now that they've spent so much money and time working towards being the main mover in the movie world, that's only helped us as well, in our world, because now we can benefit from that too, So I'm excited, man. I mean, I've spoken to the guys at Epic a couple of times and tried to see what way they feel would be the best way to do it. And then I also watched or listened to your podcast where you had the guy from Netherlands. Was it X Live it's called?
Yeah, Joris. Yes, from Prismax. Yeah, he's awesome.
So I've been stalking him for a while as well, because I think he does something very similar to what I'm trying to do, but maybe just in a different way. But because before that I was like, has anybody ever done this before? Because it's such a niche thing. I was like, nobody's probably ever tried this, and I was kind of scratching my head. And then when I seen that he can do it, and then when I spoke to the Epic guys, then they're like, yeah, it's super simple. Just use end display and off you go. And it's like, oh, sick. This is actually super easy. I was going into it thinking this is going to be a nightmare to set up, and this is going to be like a real issue. And we've yet to like bog into the details of it yet. But from any work that we've done so far, this feels like it's very easy to do. And also one of the things I love about Unreal is that like if we have a problem on one night, we can just go back into the scene and change it there and then I don't have to re-render it, and I could be on a plane to somewhere to the next show and change it while I'm on the plane. That would not happen in Cinema 4D world or Blender, I guess, even though Eevee is getting a lot quicker and stuff. And I think Octane's talking about bringing out real-time rendering, but they've never really done it yet.
But even if they bring it on, the problem again is Unreal Engine is the only software that has a whole department dedicated to film and animation. So because of the virtual production and the end display, you're able to put all of these visuals on a gigantic fucking screen and run it in real time. Yep. All the other 3D softwares don't have a department dedicated to this, right? Unreal Engine right now, I think even today, you can take your scenes, if you want to, turn it into a fucking Fortnite game. If you want to, you can fucking do that, right? You cannot do that with other 3D softwares. One thing I definitely see you guys should try, I don't know if you have already,
I know what you're saying.
The motion design tools that are out in Unreal Engine, they are running based on Niagara's engine, so the particle system, but they're a lot more user-friendly. Plus, they have audio reactivity too. So I can imagine some of your visuals could definitely use that. It's fairly new, and we just started playing around with it for the new course that we're making for Unreal. It's insane how cool it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was using for one of the, I've done a couple of visuals for Syren now at this point, just my own stuff that I use, and one of the tools we use was a plugin called Audio Reactica. I use that for basically it's a light controller, but you can also use it for DMX and stuff like that as well. But I used that at the time, and I just like it just did such a good job. And I think just the fact that we can do this all in real time, it's so easy for me to like I could do now something in a day that would probably have taken me a week in Cinema 4D, and that's not me saying that it's because Cinema 4D is slow. It's just more because the way I work naturally as a music producer, I can work more efficiently like with Unreal than I can on the Cinema 4D, so yeah, it's just mind-blowing, man, and it seems like they're really up for developing stuff for the live side, and more importantly the movie side, which is great because that directly helps us anyway. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for Unreal, and I think it's the software of the future, and I think it's just going to get better and better.
I agree.
I wouldn't believe we would have this conversation with a music producer. It's crazy. So how is the process now for you working with your 3D artist? So now you have this big show coming up, you want to make the visuals. Are you the one doing the actual work, or you're the one now reviewing most of this stuff? I mean,
it kind of depends project to project, but like, I kind of explain it sort of similar to like, if I was to make a full song, but I was just not comfortable with mixing it down and mastering it, I would kind of class it in the same way, where like by the time the animator gets the project, a lot of the stuff's already locked in, but it's just like sometimes because of time, other times because I'm just not skilled enough at what I want to get it to do, but the main parts are already there, so it means that rather than them having to come up with it from scratch, they already have a lot of the assets, be it the characters or the scene or the world. And yeah, they might change around some of the lights and the trees and stuff to make it prettier, but for the most part, I've already got everything where I want it, and I kind of tend to gravitate towards 3D artists that are good or cool with that, because some people aren't. Some people just want to start and they've got their own workflow. They don't want to look at my shit and have to like decipher and stuff, which is never that tidy. So I kind of gravitate towards the guys that are open to sending me the file, and I send it back and they send it over, and again it just goes back to the very beginning, where the fact that I can, rather than trying to ring up the guy and be like, hey, I want you to move this light here, I can just be like, well, just send me the Cinema 4D file, and then I'll change it and send it back again, and it's done in 5 minutes versus like a whole day long thing. And it's great for me because I can get it quicker. It's great for them because they're not having to kind of guess what I want, and it's just communication sake. It just makes the job way easier for all of us.
I actually want to slowly transition this from visuals to the music. Is that how you collaborate in the world of music as well? You take the files, send it over to each other, you keep working on it until it's done.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, whenever I worked on, I don't collaborate too much anymore, but whenever I do, it's basically that. I don't really, I don't know. I mean, I never felt too comfortable working in a studio environment with somebody where I was on the spot trying to come up with stuff, because my whole ethos is fuck around and find out, basically. So
nice.
It's like, and it comes to like with the music as well, where I could, for instance, the Syren synth, that was just me messing around for hours on end, and then be like, oh, that kind of sounds sick. Let me send it to Matteo, Anyma, and see what he thinks. And then that's how that track was born, But if I was in a session with him there and then, and we were kind of like, right, we need to do this, and we've got till 4 o'clock, and then the studio, somebody else, that track would never have came about. So, that's why I love just getting the workflow. I like just have my own space to get relaxed and do it, and then they'll send me stuff and I'll send it back. And sometimes most of the times I get more involved than the other guy, just because that's just the way I am. But it's always a kind of a collaborative process. And I think with Ableton, it's just so easy to do. They make it so easy just to swap files over and back. That's one of the things I always kind of like. One of the things that I found an issue with the likes of Cinema 4D and stuff was just even sending files over and back was always a bit of a nightmare, and then if I'm on the wrong version, then it's not going to work right. And with Unreal, that doesn't really happen. It's just you package it up and you send it off, and there's a zip and off you go. But with Cinema 4D and stuff, I found that being a blockade as well. But yeah, for the music point of view, that's how we approach the collaborations, and that's kind of how I work. And collaboration wise, I love to sort of making music that sounds a bit like me, but also make sure that the other artist is involved as well, so that it kind of comes up with something fresh, and that's where new sounds are born.
So we talked about the collaboration in 3D, and we know that when you're collaborating in 3D and when you're going back and forth, there are so many things to learn from each other, like the optimization and the other aspects of it. How does it work when you are collaborating in music? So you collaborated with Deadmau5, with Anyma. How does it work when you guys are sending files to each other? What are the reviews like?
I mean, for the artists for the artists that I work with, they, for instance, Deadmau5 has been producing for 25, 30 years, so I don't have to tell him how to tweak his kick drum. But, so mainly when it comes to that, it's more, melodics and, well, what about trying this? And it's almost more kind of like what I said, is just like we mess around and we find out what happens. And sometimes, a producer could come to me and say, well, did you try doing it like this instead of that? And then I'm like, no, I didn't, but that sounds sick, and because there's no right or wrong way. I mean, when I work with guys, it's always just about how do we get the best product out there and how do we make the best song. It's not, I don't have any ego in it. And if it's a case where one guy is way better than me at it and he can get it done better, then so be it. I'm not going to, throw my ideas just for the sake of it, because ego gets in the way. So for the main, it's just more, not really so much technical stuff anymore, because music's quite you don't run into the same problems in the music world as you do in the 3D world, where like just something will not fucking work in 3D, and it's like, why?
Okay, so that's only in our world. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, very odd time, but mostly it's like in the 3D world, more times than enough, I'm sitting speaking with the other animator, being like, why is this not working? What the hell? And then we'll find out it's some dumb thing that just, we had to go deep digging into a forum to figure it out. But, with music, it's fairly put together. I mean, you get the odd plugin that doesn't work, but for the most part, it's taste. And it's like, well, what about less reverb in the sound? And how about sketching that out? What about making it shorter or longer? It is very just creative, and, we also work, most of the guys I work with, we work super fast, and we'll get a track done in probably a day, and then we'll go test it out. Yeah, because a day? Yeah, usually it takes us like a day to get it done, and what we'll do is then we'll then play it at the weekend and be like, yeah, it sounds good, but maybe the kick drum is a bit too loud, or maybe this bit goes on a bit too longer, and then we'll just cut the slice of it, and then we can have it exported in less than 30 seconds, and then we try it again, and then whenever we get to a point where we're both happy with it, we'll play it for months on end. And then when we're all happy with it, we'll send it, we'll either, usually I'll master it myself, or he'll master it, whoever it is. And then we'll just release it, So I try to have as little like blockades as possible in the music world, because I like to just get to the start, as I said, the start and end point myself, and rather than having a bunch of other people get involved in the creative process, because even something as subtle as like a mix down and a master, most people are like, well, that's just a technical thing to make it sound good, but it's actually not, because you like your kick drum louder than I do, and you like your bass line louder than I do. So when you're a mix engineer, you just, not even on purpose, but you just automatically go, well, this is how it should sound, But that is actually part of the creative process, and that's them having the oar in, and they always say, a good mixing engineer won't, he won't do that, but they all do anyway. So then you get a track back that still your song, but it doesn't really sound like you anymore, and that's something that I always say to the new music generation coming through. Try and learn the fundamentals of how to master a song. Try and learn how to get stuff sounding good on your own. And of course, you can always go to a mix engineer, and maybe you'll find one that you love and you'll just always use them and you'll have a great synergy. But for the most part, I would advocate just trying to get as close as you can yourself. And then if you really do need the help, then of course you use somebody that knows what they're doing. But I feel like, with the technology we have these days and the tools we have, you can get to the start and end point without needing a $100,000 studio. I mean, half of this place doesn't get used, man.
But it's a good background. It's a great background. Keep them.
That's why it's there. But for the most part, because, I work so much on the road, it's all about plugins and VSTs and stuff. And like, those synths back there, if I was in the studio all year round, I would use them for sure. But the problem is, like, if I go and make something in that synth and then I'm in Abu Dhabi or Dubai and I want to change it, how do I do that? I can't. I have to fly back here and fucking wait to get done, and it's not efficient, So
yes.
But but they're still nice to have, and I throw them out now and again and play around with them. But it's very, that's the parallels between music and visuals. I think it's quite good,
I want to give everybody listening a sense of what it's like being Ruben, a sense of what it's like living a life of a DJ and a music producer. What does your day or week or month look like, depending on how you want to summarize it, right? You want to go down to the day or you want to go to a month?
Most weeks it's kind of like you wake up and like, especially now it's quite intense because we're midway through an album project, but on a regular week, I'll usually wake up on a Monday tired from the weekend. I'll have spent a day getting back from somewhere, wherever it is, and then I'll get up and head out here for a couple of hours, figure out what the business side, what I've been doing, because we also own our own label, and I do everything independently, so there's a lot of that going on as well. So I'll get that out of the way, and then usually in the evening times I'll be out here till 3 or 4 in the morning. I'll work on music then, and then I'll wake up at around 8 or 9, rinse and repeat. And then on a Thursday evening I'll check my phone and be like, right, where do I go this weekend, and how early do I have to be at the airport to be on time, and like I won't even really look to see what's going on,
Shit.
Because it's just so much these days, and we book our tours and we book our shows 6 months in advance. So by the time the gig comes, I've kind of forgotten about it. I'm like, oh shit, I'm heading to Budapest this weekend. I forgot about it. But that's sort of how that works, and then, as I said, because we're in album process and we're in album mode, it's just so intense. It's like I've taken on the task of doing a lot of the visuals myself, and I mixed and mastered all my own records, and also I'm independently releasing the album as well. So everything kind of has to go through me in one sense or another. So it's fairly full on. But I probably portray it as like this hard work, and it's really not. It's in the sense where it's not hard work because I love what I do. It's what I've always done, and it's all I know, so I'm still I feel very blessed to be here and to have a career in music that I spent the best part of 12 years trying to pursue, so now it's just trying to create the best product all the time, and try and keep expanding on the ideas and coming up with cool, fresh stuff that other people aren't thinking about, both in the music world and the visual world. And that's where my head's at, and that's, even when I'm not in here, that's what I'm always thinking about all the time, so.
The reason why I asked that question is because I want to lead it up to the next one, which is time management. You clearly don't get enough sleep. I'm just hearing what you're talking about, the traveling and the studio time. How do you balance your time, knowing the importance of studio time? That's where you create. Touring, that's when you go and show people what you've created. Making fucking visuals, because that wasn't part of the work. Now you've made it part of your work. And then the overall business part of it, because you're now a businessman. The more I think about it, than you are a DJ, music producer, or 3D artist, because you have to manage all of this and see where to spend your valuable 24 hours. Because if you spend more time on visuals, your music's going to suffer. Spend more time on studio time, your tour is going to suffer. How do you go about balancing your time?
Well, I think the main thing is to have a great team around you. I think that's super important, and everybody that's successful in what they do will say the same thing, because I can't take credit in everything I do because I don't do it all. And I'm very blessed to have the people that I have on board, like Floss that you spoke to a little while ago before the call, and they cover so much of the groundwork, and they cover so much of the stuff that I just would not be able to do, and without them I wouldn't be able to focus on the music and the visuals and everything else in between, because there's just so much stuff that happens, and even in between all that there's just so much that goes on. But as for the creative side, I try to, like, at the end of the week I'll be like, right, well, what am I going to do this week? Oh, I got to get this remix done, and I got to work on a storyboard for this, and I got to work on that, and then I'll just like a dog with a bone, just go at it all week, and how long it takes, and sometimes at the expense of getting yelled at by my friends or missing and stuff. It's just, I don't know, man. Maybe it's the autism in me or something. I don't know, but it's just one of those things where I just get so I just get so zoned in that I just lose track of everything else, and everything else goes out the window. So that's and it's probably not healthy either. I should probably figure that out a bit. But
no, it's healthy. It's healthy. Keep it. That's where growth happens. No, we see it so many times. I have to sometimes drag Faraz out of his PC because he's in it. He will lose track of time. But then sometimes when the result comes out, it's perfect. You need to have those moments to go all in and lose track of time for the perfect result to come out. If you're just saying, I'm spending 45 minutes, and sometimes it takes 45 minutes for you to get warmed up about the idea. Keep those hours.
You need to have an unhealthy obsession with your passion, or else it's never going to work. No. If people around you are not judging you and calling you and shouting at you like your friends are and telling you, fuck, you need to hang out, then you're not doing it the right way. Because if you're truly passionate about something, you're going to spend more hours than you're supposed to on the thing. And that's when you're going to find success. Because if you just follow, like, let's say the corporate job, the 9 to 5 for your passion, it's never going to work. Because what if at 6 p.m. is when you actually fucking do the render and the right render comes out? What if it's at 3 a.m. in the morning
Usually
when the right idea,
it's
in the fucking 3 a.m. mornings that the idea for the music comes out, not at like the perfect morning. It's usually the times where you're like fucking tired, your eyes are fucked up, your mind's all fucking broken. That's when the best creative work is done, because you cannot plan for it, right? You just got to keep going at it. And I'm going to use your quote, fuck around till you find out. That's the way we do it as well, honestly.
No, you need to have such a strong yes to say no to distraction. That's the way that you can find the true passion and the true result from the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's just like, I don't know, it's I always feel like to be great at something, it does require sacrifice. And as you said, like, people that work in a 9 to 5 job, they sometimes I'm envious of them, because they can just switch off and not worry about it till the next day. And it's just that sometimes I'm like, I wish I could just do that, man, but then I look at what I've achieved and what I'm working on and what I'm working towards, and I'm really proud of it. And it just requires sacrifice, and it's just one of the, for better or for worse, that's just what we have to do. If you want to be great at something, you have to sacrifice some things, and that's just how it goes, and there is, you can, go on YouTube and watch all the guys saying, have this for 1 hour and do this for another hour and do this, and it all falls to shit, man, because I've tried it a bunch of times. And then it just never works, because all of a sudden you're getting there and it's like working. Next thing, this came up. Now you got this, and then shit, I came back to the calendar and now I'm 4 hours fucking over my hours, and really I should be home now, but I'm still here, And it's just, I don't know, man. Maybe there is people out there that's figured it out, but I don't think I ever will at this point,
Dude, when we quit our job, I remember me and Farah looked at each other. We said, finally, we bought our freedom. We now have more time. The truth is, that was the biggest lie. You just have more time to become a slave to your passion. And your passion can take up all of the fucking time now. Exactly. This is the one thing people don't realize. You will have no time when you leave the corporate job that you hate. I'm just talking about that specific group, which is a large group if you compare it to the entire world's population. When you leave that job, you actually have much less time to hang out with friends, to do the things that you love outside of your passion. But I rather every single day be a slave to my passion and work on something that I love than to work the job that I hate, but then be able to switch off for 4 or 5 hours. I do get the envy though. I do get it sometimes, especially on the weekends. We get a call from friends. We just can't go because I'm working on something that I love, and the more I put in, the more hours, the more results I'll get. And I'm ambitious as fuck. I know you are based on the conversation. So it's difficult to switch off. That's the hardest thing about doing what you love.
Yeah, that's what I find as well. It's just very hard to switch off. And even like I'll get home from the studio after working, all day or whatever, or all night, and then I'll still whip out the laptop and do more. Like moves from one building to another, basically. And it's one of the there's nothing I can do. And the other side of that then too is the motivation. I think because the guys that work 9 to 5, they're motivated to keep working, because if they don't, they're going to get fired, but we don't have that, because there's nobody telling us, you got to do this, you got to do that. We have to motivate ourselves, and we have to be like, well, if we don't do this, we're going to fall behind. And that's another thing that I find some artists struggle with, and I've worked with artists before that are way more talented than I am, but they just didn't have the fire and the motivation. And that is such an important thing in any creative, really. If you, not even creative, just in business, if you want to work for yourself, you have to keep yourself motivated, and you have to be able to get up every morning and like almost train yourself to do this, even if nobody's telling you to do it, because otherwise you will just fall behind, and that's something that took a while to figure out as well. And I'm lucky to kind of always be motivated. But again, as you said, it's the motivation comes from because I enjoy it. I would find it very hard to be motivated to do something I don't want to do. Like whenever my accountant's been screaming at me for my VAT returns for the past 2 weeks, I've got no motivation at all to do that. So it's just stuff like that. Is like that's where the motivation drops.
That's true.
But he's a great accountant, so.
So in your field of work, there is also, I would say, a huge distraction. So you're touring. So if you not consider the studio time, the touring part can be considered work, but can turn into fun and drinking and staying over. So you're playing at a festival, you stay 2 more days, you party at the festival. That could drag for another week. How do you manage those distractions?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I really treat it as a job, in the sense where I'm flying from here to here, and I'm going to go back as soon as I can get back. The only time I would stay would be if it's a country that I really enjoy being in. Like, for instance, Japan, I stayed an extra couple of days there because I just love the culture, I love everything about it, and I felt inspired coming back from there. But for the most part, whenever I look at a routing for a show, it's like, how quick can I get there and how quick can I get back?
Is it on purpose? So do not get it? Okay.
Totally on purpose, and it's not because I don't like the country. It's just more, I don't know, something in my brain's like, well, I'm wasting my time by being here whenever I could be back here doing something, which maybe isn't, I don't know if that's healthy or not, but that's the way I kind of view things. And, I like where I live. I'm from Ireland, and, I love my country, and I love being home. So, I feel more comfortable being there. And I've traveled, I've been so lucky to travel around the world for 5 or 6 years and see most parts of the world, but still I like to get back. But it's more so because I can get back into schedule quickly, and I think if I was, after every show getting drunk or whatever and then hanging around for 3 or 4 days, work just wouldn't get done. And because it's a lot of this requires me being here, or requires me kind of being the guy that leads the charge, I need to be on point, and not every artist has to do that. There's some artists that's just so removed from their business that they just have their team just do everything, and they just fly around, they look at what they're doing, and they just have fun, which is totally fine as well. But I think in the direction that I'm going, and the stuff that I'm trying to do, I need to be responsible enough to be like, all right, well, I'm going to come back here and actually do a bit of work, But it's kind of, I mean, it works both ways. You can do whatever you want, but I feel like the big issue in my world is with artists is burnout, and that happens very quickly if you tear it too much, and if you're touring every weekend and you're getting drunk and all the rest, and it's just you end up kind of after a while just burning yourself out, and I've seen so many guys in my scene just come and go over the past 5 years that just they don't exist anymore, and they're super talented and they should be still doing what they're doing, but it's just they lost it, and they that whole thing kind of kicks into like motivation a little bit as well, where whenever you're hungover, the last thing you want to do is come in here and start trying to work on a Cinema 4D project, right? So You know, and if you do that every week, then eventually, you know, it just starts getting to you, you know, and then it's just a kind of it's like a really slippery slope. So I keep that in mind every time, and I treat it as a job, basically, you know, where it's like, it's still fun, you know, I love playing and I love, you know, meeting fans, and I get such a kick out of that, you know, but I do treat it as like, right, I'm going to leave here on Friday and come back on a Sunday, and by Monday morning I want to be back in the studio, you know, and that's the only way I can do it, you know, otherwise the wheels will fall off, I think.
Yeah, it's very much a discipline of having that calendar and mindset together, of knowing that you're going to go in, perform, and leave.
Not for Dubai next time, though.
Not for Dubai, because you're staying, because we're here. Of course, we're going to hang out. Yeah, we're going to do the podcast physically. We're going to make sure you have no parties so that you can go back safe and continue working. But generally speaking, I think it's the same thing when it comes to having a diet. When you start out with a goal and say, I'm just not going to buy carbs and put it in my fucking fridge in the first place, then I will not be tempted. You're doing the same thing. You're like, I'm just going to set my calendar in a way that I get in, get out. I don't allow myself to have those extra times to be tempted to go for parties or hang out. Because at the same time, I understand it must be so challenging, because you got all these people who are working during the week, and now they get to see you on a weekend when you're touring or whatnot. And they want to have fun with you. So they don't have any bad intentions, but they want to have fun with you. And you kind of want to do the same thing because they're your friends, they're fans, but you have to say no. You got to have that strong yes inside you to say no to others, so that you can work on your own passion and your dreams.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times you do feel like you're the party pooper, you know, because, you know, they want to go to the
As
party.
the DJ, you're the party pooper. That's insane.
Yeah. It's, and you know, like you have to say no a lot of the times, but also what they don't realize is that, like, you know, they can go to bed afterwards because they probably live in the city that you're partying in, but I have to fly 15 hours to get back home again the next day, and then have a whole week of work ahead of me, you know. So, you know, they're in a different time, but you know, it's never a massive problem. I think because I never really got big into partying anyway, it's never an issue for me. I think it would be different if I spent my younger years, you know, partying like crazy and just, you know, always being out. I was always a nerd, and I was always big into music and technology. So, I enjoy that more than going getting wasted or whatever, and you know, it's just not, it's never been me, you know, and the people that surround me never were like that either. Like my mum and dad don't drink, and you know, so I was always brought up in a family where they're not, like, you know, by no means against alcohol or anything like that, but it's just that I didn't see it happening too much, and I was never going to the pub, and I wouldn't view my normal Saturday night like most people, where it's like, oh, let's go to the pub or go to a club or whatever. That's not my typical thing. If I'm not getting paid to go to a club, I'm not going to fucking be there.
Oh my god, that's such a different mindset.
That's a good mindset.
Imagine, Ruben, let's go to the pub. Am I getting paid?
Yeah, am I getting paid? No, bro, we're just gonna get a fucking drink. What the fuck?
I know, I'm not coming.
Yeah, so that's the way I'm gonna deal with it. But yeah, it's I guess it's unique in a sense.
I want to talk about the mindset.
Yeah,
you have released several tracks, a lot of music in the past, and sometimes the track is a hit. It's a banger. Everybody loves it. Do you get the stress of releasing a new track right after that banger? The expectation from the crowd. Can I do the same thing?
When I was younger, I would have done. I mean, my first breakout hit was a track called "Along Came Polly," which
we love that.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a great one.
Oh, thanks. And I mean, I felt stressed then because I was still kind of, I guess, people had no clue who Rebūke was by that point, and I was still sort of like, I guess, showing the world what I'm capable of, you know. But you know, I managed to ride that wave, and after that, we made some smart moves musically, and we worked with the right people, and I managed to kind of build up a career where, you know, not every track is going to be a hit, just like not every Instagram post is going to be a hit, you know. And it's just and I've come to learn that that's how things work, you know, and that's just how, it doesn't matter what you do, you cannot, from the guys at the top to the guys at the bottom, there is no science to it, you know. You can just put out what you love. So I've sort of at this point garnered a fan base of people that just like what I do, you know. So, you know, every maybe 10 or 12 tracks will, you know, go above that, and you know, it might end up into a track like Polly or Syren or whatever, you know. But you know, the other tracks are just songs that fans enjoy, and you know, I just do it for that, you know. And it's always the tracks that I think aren't going to do that well are the ones that surprise me, you know. And
oh my god,
yes.
Can you repeat that? Please repeat that one more time, please.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. It's always the ones that I think are going to do not that well that just fly, you know. And You know, like for instance, to give you the story behind Along Came Polly, you know, I mean, that record sat on my hard drive for almost 18 months, and it was so. And at the time, I had sent it to DJs, and this was before. This was very early in the Rebūke career, where really I wasn't even touring at that point. And you know, I sent it to a bunch of DJs that were big in the scene at the time, and most of them came back and said they didn't like it, or they just ignored it or whatever. And then one guy, this guy called Jamie Jones, he discovered it in a pack of songs that I sent him of 10 songs, and it might have been like the 10th song, because that's how little I believed in the track at that point. And he played it, and then it just my whole life changed.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it just went from within 3 months of me sitting in a studio nowhere near as expensive as it is now to all of a sudden booking tours all around UK and Ireland, which then led to US, and it was just such a whirlwind of a time, you know. And that to me was just like, I don't know why this is working or how it's working, but also it just, for me, it's like, it was great, because it gave me like that little, like, I don't know, man, it gave me that little boost that I needed, because, you know, I was pushing for 10 or 12 years in the scene, and nothing, I had like some small wins, but nothing big enough to cause a ripple. And that was the first time I had like a really big win, and that's what set me up. And I think the years before that led me to being able to manage this well, because I'd already been through a lot, you know, and, you know, I knew how to handle it, and I knew I was prepared, and I'm glad that I broke through when I did, because I think if it was 10 years earlier than that, I probably would have botched it, and I wouldn't be here today speaking to you, you know, because I would have been a one-hit wonder, you know. But, you know, yeah.
Okay,
so many
let's
things.
unpack that. Let's unpack that.
First of all, shout out to Jamie Jones.
Yes.
I love Jamie Jones.
Yeah.
He's so good. We were at his show, Paradise,
Amnesia?
this summer. Yes. So good. Yeah, we love Jamie Jones.
We are not party people, by the way. We're good boys. We don't do that.
So, second thing.
No, can we just stay on that for one moment? When you said you sent 10 tracks to Jamie Jones, you just cold emailed him, DM'd him, or were you guys in conversation? I just want to know, how did you get around the idea of sending your music to others?
I think it was through an agent I had at the time. Like, I joined this agency, and they, for some reason, I believed in the project, and they had a contact directly with Jamie, and they were like, "Hey, send me a folder of songs, and I'll send it to Jamie and see what he thinks." And yeah, as I said, there was like 10, maybe 12 tracks, and that one was like way at the bottom, because at that point I went through 12 months of people saying they didn't like it, or they didn't think it was a strong enough record and stuff. And, you know, and then he played it, and the ironic thing is that, I'm not going to call them out, but like a lot of the guys that said they didn't like it back then actually started to play it.
Oh, shit!
Oh, now you want
yes.
this.
Yes.
Must have felt amazing.
Must have felt good, man, after that. Holy shit.
Yeah, I was like,
wow.
Shit. So I was like, so that's how it works.
Bitch, don't play my song now.
I had to tell one guy to stop playing it, because Jamie had told me at the time, he says, let's keep it exclusive on my sets. I'm going to build it. I'm going to keep playing it every big festival. And then some little fucking pipsqueak DJ started to play it. And I was like, how did he get this track? And then I realized that I sent it to him like 8 months before that. And then he went back into the file, didn't play it back then, but then went back into the folder and then downloaded it and started to play it. And I'm like, man, I had to actually speak to him about it. I was like, look, you can't do this.
You could use it 8 months ago, not now.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
interesting. So going back to the unpacking of things, this is now a new discovery, because we had to have enough podcast episodes and talk to enough artists to find out that this is true. So many artists have their breakthrough, have their success with the pieces of art that they do not believe in. This is the most interesting thing for me. Some of our best performing videos that we spent months on, we watch before uploading and say, this is going to flop so hard. This is not going to work. People are not going to like it. And they performed the best. You never know as an artist what is going to work for you and what won't. And the only thing you should do is fucking share your work with as many people as you possibly can, and take criticism as much as you can, but still keep going. And I will add one more thing to this. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show Severance. Do you know about it?
I'm watching it. It's crazy.
One of the best fucking series right now. So
good.
what a mind fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I love it.
Extra Weg, who worked on the title sequence, who created that 3D intro animation, he was posting on Instagram his work. I'm sure he's had his fair share of positive comments and criticism, right? As all artists do. He was discovered by Ben Stiller on Instagram to go and do Severance's title sequence. Ben Stiller was just scrolling on Instagram and then found his work satisfying, eerie and satisfying, which worked perfectly with Severance. Yeah. And the rest of it is history. He won an award,
won an Emmy for
an
it.
Emmy award for that title sequence. How insane is that? And if he was basically telling himself, oh, maybe I saw this one comment from this guy that said, oh, your work is shit. Oh, it's too disgusting. Don't put so much blood and gore in your content. He would have stopped if he was like most other artists, but he didn't. He kept going. And the fact that you kept pushing that track, even if it was the 10th track in that folder, you kept pushing it, is insane. I'm so happy for you, man.
Yeah, it's been my career has been so many ups and downs, and as you just said, things that work out that I never thought would work out, and songs perform so well that we didn't think would do well at all, and that was one of them. And it's just it's a hard one, and that's why I love the music industry so much, because it's just so exciting, because you just don't know, and it's getting a lot more clinical these days, and it's getting a lot more Spotify driven and statistics driven and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, people still love music because of the emotion that it captures, and they love music because they feel something when they do it, and there's not a statistic in the world that can try and like generate that. And that's why going back quickly to the AI and stuff, I think that's why they will never really be able to get to where we are, because it still requires that human connection to like figure out this is why it worked. And obviously, like, whenever I made it, I can't even remember making it back here very vaguely, but I must have had something in my head that thought, oh, that's pretty sick, I'm going to finish that and make it a track. And that's all it took, because then that connection resonates with more people. And I think if you really love what you do, then eventually you will find your tribe, and you'll find the people that love what you do. And that could be 10 people, it could be 10 million people, you just don't know. But if you love it, somebody else will, but it's just that's and for me, that's the most important thing. Just do what you love, and forget about all the rest. Just don't worry too much about statistics, or worrying about all the modern day stuff that just holds you back. Just make good shit, and then eventually it will at some point or another pay off.
The second thing I want to talk about from this story that you said is having the right foundation. Of course, Jamie Jones liked that track, played it many times, but if you didn't work hard for many years, if you didn't have the foundation, if you didn't continue to work hard after that, you wouldn't have the success that you had today. You wouldn't have all the tracks ready right after that to go out and people will hear it. People would just needed a spark to find out about you, because you have built the foundation. And I think it's very important for people to do not be picky and to not be perfectionist.
Yes.
Because if you are posting, whether it's your music, if it's your art, if it's your video, whatever it is, if you're posting so much, the moment you have a viral piece, the moment somebody discovers you, they can go back and look, oh my God, this guy has done it for years. This guy has so many other things that I can look at, listen to, and I can enjoy. And you immediately build a fan base right after that.
Yep, absolutely, man. And it's just, if I hadn't really had 10 or 12 years under my belt already, I probably, as I said, I probably would have botched it, because we did at the time get so many opportunities from, major labels. They wanted to put a vocal over it, and they wanted to send it into the charts and stuff. And, you're getting all these emails from the big, companies, Universal and stuff. And if I was 10 years younger, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be famous. This is amazing. These big labels. But now I see them for what they are, and I know what they do and why they do what they do. So I was just like, nah, I'm fine.
Legend.
And really that was why, the route that I took was just, that's why I'm still here, I think, and I've seen so many guys have a big record, and then they just fall in the pitfalls of listening to people that give them either poor advice, or they just don't know what they're doing. And that's super important, and that's where it can get messy, because that's kind of, I don't know, that's when it can go downhill very quickly if you don't have the right people around you.
What's your advice to them, a DJ or an artist in any field who has just had their first breakthrough through whatever form? How do they navigate it so that they can become successful?
I mean, my advice would be to try and block out as much noise as possible, and try and like figure out what you're feeling whenever you made that record, and go from there, because you will get inevitably hundreds of people trying to latch off you. They'll try to get you to go in a direction that maybe you're not comfortable with, but you'll think, well, these guys have been doing so much, they've such a big catalog of stuff, they must be the right people to talk to because they've done it before. But in fact they don't, because they've done it for themselves but not for the artists that we're talking about. So they need to go back. I'd advise them to go back and try and get that same feeling that you had when you made that record or that album or whatever it is. I just carry on from it, man, because that's what the fans really want, and try and bypass so much of as much of the crap as possible, because it is so much crap there, and you can get like your head blown very quickly with that, and it's just it just turns into like a storm of things that aren't really that important, really, because for me it's always about the song. I'm still, maybe that's old school these days, and maybe it's becoming less relevant now with social media, but for me it's still about the song, and the reason why Along Came Polly is still doing what it's doing today is because it was a good song, and people remix it, and then it gets another lease of life, and then another person remixes. Like, that song's 6 years old now, and still when I play it, people go crazy, and it's because it's a good song. It's not because it had a really good visual behind it, or it's not because it had a really good marketing team behind it. It's because it's a good record, and that's the essence of it. And I still really do believe in that, even though we're kind of moving towards a different world these days with the way social media works and the environment. But I still believe the song is what's most important. So that's the kind of advice I would give them, and yeah, it's getting tough out there, man. It's just there's so much competition, and there's just so many people doing it, and it's very puzzling sometimes to figure out what is the right step. Should I do this? Should I do that? And at every point there's a pitfall somewhere. But I think if you're good at what you do, and you believe in what you do, you'll manage to navigate through it.
What do you think is the biggest mistake the young producers and DJs make nowadays?
Well, I think they try and skip a step, and they, whenever I had my first breakout track, Along Came Polly, I actually called Jamie, and I was like, look, man, this is getting a bit crazy. What do you think I should do? And he said, first, just follow what you love to do, build your catalog. He says, keep doing music you love, but he says also don't try to make a quick way to a shallow success. And I don't really understand what he meant by that for a while. And then it's just dawned on me. After a while, I kind of figured it out. And, for instance, like, an artist can remix a Rihanna record tomorrow on TikTok, and it blows up overnight, and it gets your 10 million views, but it's a shallow success because at this time next week, they've moved on to the next remix, and they don't give a shit about you because they care about the Rihanna record and it was a remix. And this is something that I advocate originality more than anything, and that's why I set up my labels, because I want to give young artists and new artists a platform to be that person, and to be original, because I do feel like a lot of the original guys are being drowned out at the minute, and they're being drowned out by these either cheesy remixes or just crap that just is almost made just for social media, and that's a very like quick way to a shallow success, I think, and that's why they don't hang around. They're very popular for 6 months, and then you never hear from them again. It's not long term, it's short term, and I'm sure there's in the 3D world there's people doing that too.
Yes.
But so it's kind of goes across all creative sides. So that's what I would say. And I know I get some young artists or new artists come in now and again and asking for advice, and this is the advice I give them, and they don't always like it because they're seeing, on TikTok that, these guys are blowing up and they've just got lucky with a remix and they're playing all over the world, and they probably don't like me coming back and say, well, you need to stop doing all that and focus on making original music. And it's so hard to do, and I try not to come across as condescending about it, because, I can understand how difficult it is, but that's how I did what I did. Whenever Along Came Polly came out, one of the things that everybody said at the time was that it sounded different. It was in a world where the whole tech house scene was kind of blown up and stuff, but it was very wish-washy, and then I came out with this record and it just catapulted me into another world. But that was because it caught attention to people, and people were like, oh, that's a bit different to what I've been hearing for the past 6 months, and that's why I did what I did. So I think originality always trumps everything else, and that's what I would advise young artists and new artists, is to try and be original and come up with their own sound and just follow their instincts, really. And it's whenever it's it's the same in 3D. When something looks sick, you just know it looks sick, and
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, that looks sick. You don't have to like be like, oh, does it look sick or does it? You just kind of get a feeling, and that's when you know you're onto something, So that's my kind of roundabout way of giving the advice, I guess.
I don't know if you have the same thought, but what I wanted to say is, how cool is it that what you're talking about in the music world resonates to us when we're making content? I'm just talking about content, whatever kind of content you're creating. And this applies to everybody, because almost everybody's now making content in the world. As long as you got some sort of business, you're making content, you're uploading for work or for your friends. What's really cool is that me and Farhad, when we're sitting down and thinking about the kind of videos we'd like to make in the future, there are the fast, shortcut, trendy videos, right? Let's talk about the top 3s and the top 5s and all these videos that everybody's going to click on and watch, and the hook's just way too strong. It's maybe 5 seconds long, and we're making sure that we can get 1 million views. We know it's going to work. But deep down, after analyzing it, we realize because it's not original and because every fucking person in the world can do a top 5 content, so that means I'm in competition with every fucking person in the world. And so no one's going to get to know Faraz and Farhad because we're not talking. I'm just showing you 5 fucking things on the screen, and that's it. We realize, okay, if you want to actually have an impact, we need to have a 3-hour-long conversation on YouTube. That's when people get to know us. That's the original thing. That's our personality being demonstrated. It's a lot more work, but it is our original content. It's very fucking similar to what you're describing in music. Yes, you can go and pick up the trends, which is going to be faster, quicker. But if everybody else can do the same thing, then you're in competition with all of them. Whereas if you sit in the studio and try to make your own original music, which is going to be way more difficult, but when it does actually fucking hit, then you become you.
Yep, when it hits really good, you know, in the sense where, like, you know, you can, you know, skip 100 steps versus these guys skipping 5, you know, and it's just, you know, as I said, like, whenever I put out, you know, my first big record, Along Came Polly, you know, within 12 months, I was basically playing every festival in Europe, and I was ready to booking full tours around US. I mean, it was ridiculous, really, and that was just down to originality, you know. And that was, and I mean, I don't even think it's the most original track in the world, but it was just, you know, original enough that it was different, you know. And I wasn't following the same trend as everybody else. And you know, that's anybody I spoke to in the past, you know, from Deadmau5 to whatever, you know, they had all their breakout tracks. It was always because they did something different in the original, you know. And then and I'm sure, you know, like the top 5 thing you were talking about, I'm sure there's somebody that did that first as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And then it's just got a tirade of like copycats, and it's the same in the world, in the music world. And that's like whenever we released Syren in 23, you know, even to this day, I'm getting promos of people ripping it off, you know, and it's just like, fine, you can do it, but like, what's it going to do for you? You know, nothing. You know, you're just going to be known as the guy who ripped off Syren. You know, so you know, it's like it doesn't help. You know, and for every one example you see that does help, you see 100 guys just get like thrown to the dogs because of it. So, I mean, that's what I'm a massive. You know, again, just goes back to the quick way to shallow success. You don't want a shallow success. And like what you said as well about the top 5 videos and it gets 1 million views. The thing about that is that it's shallow, you know, and you know, they won't be there to see. They're going on TikTok. They're like, oh, this is funny. They like it, but they don't follow you, and they don't like. Maybe 1% might turn around and say, oh, I'm going to look more into what the guys are doing. But if you create something that's original, and even if it gets a quarter of the views or whatever, but people are super brought into what you do and they really love your messaging and stuff like that, then they're going to, like, you know, be more interested in you, and it's going to be more authentic, and it's going to be more loyal, you know. And that's what I found, and that's what's kind of always stood for me in my, you know, world. I mean, you know, I don't claim to be the most highest ranked, you know, stream artist in the world or nothing like that, or even in my lane, but you know, I've managed to keep originality at the forefront, and I think people that listen to my stuff they really like it, you know, and they really like what the message I send across, you know. So that's what's always stood for me. And but it depends what you want to do, man. You know, if you want to be that shallow guy, then go have at it, you know. Best of luck to you, but it's not what I want to do.
It's not going to last very long.
I agree with you. You want to have quality audience, and you want to have 10 people that actually care about what you say and have deep connection with you and watch your entire video and go back to your profile and watch other things that you have done, rather than 100,000 just scrolling over the video, and probably they don't remember your face, they don't remember your name. And if you show that video again in 1 month to the same guy, probably they won't even remember they've seen that video. So you want to have that strong connection with your community and audience, and that comes through authenticity. And it's fascinating for me that I wouldn't expect our conversation with you would apply to every facet of the creative work. You can apply what you said about music to videos, to content, to any sort, even coding and product making. If you're original and if you have a good quality following, you can influence those following. You can talk to them, you can get feedback from them. It's really, really fascinating.
The best example I can fucking give you is it's happening in real time right now. One of the guys we followed for our workouts is Ashton Hall, I believe is his name.
Morning routine.
Big buff guy who's doing the morning routine, 3 a.m. ice bowl, face in the ice bowl. I don't know. Have you seen that one yet?
Oh, yeah, I see that one. Yeah.
Okay, great. So the story here is this. We followed him when he had like 1 million followers. So he was big, but not viral. And we were following him. We started seeing he's doing all of these daily routines, but only to his own followers and a small group of people. When I say small, I mean really big, but small compared to the world. And then suddenly we saw the other trainers that we follow start doing the same fucking thing. They're now doing the daily routines. They're now putting their fucking head in the ice bowl. And then 5-6 days later, we see it break out. Mr. Beast is doing a video with the same guy, but only the fucking original guy. The first guy gets to go on Mr. Beast's video, not the other 100 trainers that copied him and did the same video. So you can do the shortcut, but like you said, shallow success. Only the guy who came up with it first will reap the benefits.
Absolutely, and like it's just real recognizes real, and I think, that's why Mr. Beast is reaching out to him, not the copycats, because Mr. Beast is also an original. I've never spoke to the guy or whatever. I don't know a huge amount about him, but I'm sure he respects originality as well, because he also comes up with original ideas. And once you kind of have that mindset, you don't really want to. I wouldn't say you look down on the guys that are copying, but it's just like you don't really notice them as much, because you just like, I see it every day when I get sent stuff, and I'm like, God, it just sounds like a Deadmau5 ripoff or a Rebūke ripoff or Jimmy Jones ripoff, and I never really bother about the guys, but whenever I get sent something fresh and cool and different, even if it's something that I can't play in my set, I'll still DM them, but like, man, that's just a sick tune. I really like it. Keep doing what you're doing, So like, I think real recognizes real in that sense, and it's they're a little bit harder to find these days, in the sea of weeds that we're coming through.
Yes.
But they still prevail, and what's the saying? The cream rises to the top, and it might take a bit longer these days, but eventually it will.
I do want to finalize this by saying that, for people who are taking what we're saying at face value, if you're just starting out, whether in the world of music, art, 3D, or content creation, it's fine to copy. Because I think when you're just starting out, you have no clue what you're doing. We're not talking about you, because at first you have to copy to some extent, because you have no idea what you're doing. But eventually you have to find your own path. And if you just keep copying, that's when the real problem arises. So again, if you're just a beginner, we're not talking about you. That specific group can copy. It's the only way to get
you can copy and add your own flavor
slowly.
So you can copy and add a little bit of your flavor, and then copy again, add more, and then find your own path.
But eventually you have to switch and make it more original than a copy, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Ruben, I want to talk about what you're up to now. What can the fans who are looking and listening look forward to when it comes to the upcoming months?
Well, we fully released the album in June. We're going to announce that properly in the next couple of weeks. Up till now, we've been releasing a record a month from the album. Every track has got a visual accompanied with it.
Nice.
So we have 14 records, 14 visuals. It's basically telling the story of this fictitious world called the world of Era, where characters are within this world, and we're dipping in and out of the world, different scenarios, sort of bringing fans into like this little kind of, I'm a big fan of, if you went to, say, I don't know, Disney World or whatever, and you get, or Tomorrowland or whatever, you get immersed in the world. You're there, and you're going to the even the toilets, and it's like Tomorrowland flavored toilets.
That is true. Yes.
The bar has got Tomorrowland vodka, all this stuff. So it's like it's immersive, and that's what we're trying to do with the album. And and then following on from that, we're going to basically put together a World of Era tour, which we were talking about a bit earlier with the screens, but they will all fall in part with the album, and the same visuals from the album will also appear on the tour. So that's the big thing this year, and that's kind of the real kind of core of what we're working on, and that's why I've sort of this year really turned down a lot of stuff gig wise and kind of take it easy on the touring schedule, is to really build that out, because I want to really have this I want the quality level to be so good that people are talking about it for years afterwards, and that's kind of what I'm working on, and that's sort of at the minute just taking up all my time, and that's sort of the main thing that we're working on, is building out the show and building out the album, and sort of giving fans real stuff to dig their teeth into,
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got, especially those hydraulic screens. I'm definitely pumped. Me and Farah are going to check it out. And I just wanted to end by saying it's been an immense pleasure speaking with you, Ruben.
You too, guys. Thank you. And keep doing what you're doing, because I think the world needs a podcast like you guys, and keep it up.
Thank you
bro.
so much. Appreciate it. For everybody watching and listening, we'll see you guys next week. Until then, ciao.
Ciao.